Hi, everybody. So we are here to kind of finish off this section of our Anne of Green Gables series, or at least to do another entry. And we are going to be talking about the new Netflix series, the Anne with an E is what it was called here. And we were going to review every episode, but it just wasn't going to happen after we saw it. But we wanted to at least talk about it. And so Amber's here with me. And,
hey, everyone.
Yeah. So we're going to try to kind of not only explain why we didn't care for it, but go into each episode a little bit and maybe talk about a few things we liked, but why this particular vision of the story didn't work for both of us. And so hopefully that will be helpful. I've already posted my review on my blog. That I will post a link to in the description, and you can check out and read that, and let me know what you think. And so, Amber, let's get just a little sort of summary of your overall thoughts on the series.
I actually started really high on it. So, opening shots, I was like, I don't understand what's happening, but maybe it's like a dream sequence or whatever. Fine, I accept that. Like, okay, someone's riding a horse on water. Very epic, I guess. Fine. And then we see Anne for the first time. I mean, I love the Miss Rachel Lynde. So I was like, oh my gosh, they got Rachel Lynde right, where she's like concerned and nosy, but like it's coming from a place of goodness, not from a place of being like spiteful. So I was like, oh, good. They're getting Mrs. Rachel Lynde right, which hardly anyone ever does. I was excited. And then they show us Anne, and I was like, oh my gosh, her too small wincey dress is perfect. And like, I started to cry because I was like, they got her dress right. They got Miss Rachel Lynde's right. Like, what if this is actually going to be really amazing? I was so excited. Like, my friend was watching me, and she was watching me watch it. And she was just laughing because I was like, oh, her dress is too small. It's too high. Anyway.
So did your friend watch the whole thing with you or just the one episode?
She bailed after a while.
I was going to ask, what did she think? Well, there you go.
Yeah. So I started super high, and I was thinking to myself, maybe this will be like super true to the books. And then it just went downhill from there, and there just started to be things where I didn't understand. I was flummoxed. Yeah. And I felt like I wasn't even watching anything based on Anne anymore.
Yeah.
And they were just using like characters' names. It felt very much like fan fiction, but like not even good fan fiction.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I agree. It did. And I was actually, the first episode, I was still like, I don't know, I would say I was like halfway there. Like I hadn't completely bailed. I was very uneasy about the ending of that episode, but there were still enough things that I liked that I was like, okay, it's just the beginning, whatever. And but pretty much by episode 3, I would have stopped if we hadn't been doing the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. I would have stopped. I mean, honestly, when we got to episode 2 and there was the entire thing about the whole thing of episode 2, where where they send her away, first of all, ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then Matthew goes and he gets trampled by a horse and hits a carriage, and I half expected him to have amnesia when he woke up, and then Anne almost gets kidnapped, and then they're like, it was so ridiculous. It was overly ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
I would have quit. I would have quit at episode 2.
Episode 2. The thing is, I kept asking myself, like, am I not liking this just because it isn't Anne of Green Gables? Is it good on its own as its own thing? Like, for instance, last year, I really loved Pete's Dragon, but it had almost nothing to do with the original Pete's Dragon. But I was able to be like, okay, that's the name, Pete's Dragon, and I was sort of able to be like, okay, I'm just going to put that name aside and just kind of pretend like it's Pete and his dragon or something like that, or a boy and his dragon. And so I was able to appreciate it as kind of its own thing and not worry like it is nothing to do with the original. So I don't know. So I was kept trying to do that, but I honestly think it is bad. Period. Like I don't think that it is well structured or well written as far as developing characters that you care about, and also creating enough sort of, you need a break, especially when you're dealing with children. When you're dealing, it's one thing if you're dealing, like I'm just watching Big Little Lies on HBO today, and like that's like adults, so when like hard things are happening to adults, it's one thing, but even that show has like moments of levity.
I mean, so like for instance, Breaking Bad, obviously she did Breaking Bad, and I started rewatching Breaking Bad to be like, let's see, even the people in Breaking Bad, their lives are better than the people they've crafted for Anne within Eve.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's not good writing when, especially for a miniseries. It'd be one thing, I guess, maybe for a movie, if you wanted this super dark, like whatever movie, but even then, I mean, but for a miniseries, it just became so melodramatic, so just unrelentingly joyless. That's the word that I kept thinking of. This is joyless. Yeah. And if anything, Anne of Green Gables should not be joyless. And so anyway, let's talk about each of the episodes a little bit. Okay. And kind of go through it, and
let's do it.
So the first one is called Your Will Shall Decide Your Destiny. And this, I think the reason why it is the best is it is directed by Nikki Caro, who is actually a pretty good director. Mm-hmm. She is the one who made a movie last year called The Queen of Katwe, which I loved, and that was a hidden gem that not enough people saw last year. And I think that there are a few moments of warmth and a few moments of brightness, but in this opening thing. But like I said, it ends on such a sour note that it really is tough. And so, well, let's talk a little bit about sort of at least the casting. So with Anne, what did you think of her as Anne? Did you like her? Do you think she was a good actress?
I mean, I thought aesthetically she was pretty great. Because she looks a little bit underfed, and she looks, she has red hair. And she looked like she was, thin but like capable. So as far as aesthetics go, I was on board. And she has a cute nose, and I was like, good, cute nose. That's important because Anne loves her nose. It's a thing. So I was like, okay, she likes her nose. She's good. She's aesthetically good. And I think she did a pretty good job with the acting part. I honestly didn't hate the casting except for Jerry.
Yeah.
But and maybe Miss Josephine. I didn't like her, but I think it was more her horrible wig than her, but I couldn't get past it.
Yeah. I thought that she was a little too mannered at times. It felt like she was sometimes when I was expecting to feel emotion, that she seemed like she was just reciting dialogue, particularly in the imagination sequences. I just didn't feel that sense of like awe and wonder that, I don't know, it felt like she was sort of repeating them at a poetry reading, kind of more than like this real sense of wonder. And part of that is the flaw of the filmmaker, but I don't know, I felt like she was fine but not great.
Yeah, I see that. And then also I felt like a lot of the times when she was feeling hurt or angry, that I couldn't quite connect with that, because I didn't feel like it was really something that I couldn't really connect. I just couldn't
like when she is angry at Rachel Lynde, it just didn't feel like an authentic like rage, and it's hard to be too tough on child actors because it's a kid, like she tried, what are you gonna do? But like but she did look the part, and she did have nice moments, and a lot was asked of her, so I definitely feel I feel sympathy for her. She was asked to to go through a lot and to do a lot. So,
Yeah, and I don't hate on her. I think she
Right.
was like, I don't blame her at all
No.
for anything. And I ultimately am fine with honestly most of the actors.
Yeah.
I just wish they had a better vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so yeah, then you had a woman named Geraldine James as Marilla and R.H. Thompson as Matthew. And I felt like they made Marilla way too unlikable in this series, and she never really warms up the way that she should. And I also felt like they made Matthew, like, he wasn't, I don't know, like, he was loving,
He
but
wasn't Matthew.
he wasn't Matthew. Like, he was, it was
He was
almost
like a nice old man.
yeah, it wasn't like he was, it was almost like he was embarrassed to, like, not, it's one thing to be embarrassed when getting the dress, that's one thing, but I felt like he was almost embarrassed when he was even just talking to Anne a lot of the times.
Yeah, I mean, and in the books, Matthew is shy, but he's not like embarrassed. He's just always like, oh, he doesn't really like talking to people. He doesn't like talking to Marilla. He's just a very quiet, simple, kind man.
Yeah.
And for the first part of the episode, they did I mean, honestly, for the first 50 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm on board. We got this. And then
so this is where we get to the problems. So instead of, they have the Rachel Lynn apology, because there's a lot in this series that is not in the book at all. But they do have a few things. They have the Rachel Lynn apology, and then they have the brooch situation. And this was just like bizarre to me, because that's why I said it, the end of the episode left me on this sour note, because Marilla, when she finds out that Anne had the brooch, she thinks that Anne is lying to her about the brooch, that, because Anne gives this sort of false confession, and Marilla sends her away to the asylum as punishment for taking the brooch. And Marilla would never do that. Like, no sane person would do that.
Marilla would never do that.
No way.
Even frankly, okay, once Marilla sees that Anne's, life was a little bit hard for her, where no one really wanted her, and she, and she sees that no one cared to bother to make her pray or teach her important things. Basically from there, even though she still goes through all the rigmarole of pretending like she's going to give her to Mrs. Blewett or send her back or whatever.
Yeah.
From that moment on, Marilla's not going to send this girl off someplace to not be taken care of. And
no, I mean, just as a Christian woman, even if she had decided that she was going to give, not keep Anne, even if she had decided that, there is no way that she would do something like that out of anger. Like, that's just not a Christian. This is a woman who has never been in the depths of despair. She has never, it's just not within her character at all to do something like that just out of anger. Like,
yeah, no, and Marilla wouldn't have used that time to punish her and send her away. Marilla would take that time, and she does in the books, to teach Anne what to do, because she feels it's her duty to put her on the right path. She's not just going to send her off to the wolves.
Like, not ever go to the party is one thing, or like make her, to have some other kind of punishment. There is no way that she do that. And then, like, you're supposed to buy that she would do that, and then almost instantaneously, as soon as she has the brooch back, then she's like, go after her or whatever, and then Matthew is riding off on his steed to, you're just like, what is this?
From there on, I was just like, okay, maybe they'll catch her really fast and it'll just be like a thing, and they just tried to make it dramatic.
Yeah,
because sometimes they do, in stupid adaptations, send Anne away and then they bring her back and it's fine. But and then it just got worse.
Yeah.
And it just kept going.
Yeah. So then we get to episode. Well, and we should talk about in episode 1. We know in the book that she has had some hardships, and it has been a little bit. You've read the book more recently than I have, and we were talking about, you know, some of your sort of perspective on that, but they are very, very brutal in their portrayal of the abuse that Anne has felt and gone through, and I think that you could do that in a compelling way that I would be okay with, but the way that it happens here, it just feels so exploitive. And yeah,
definitely, it feels more like, okay, instead of trying to give you guys a deeper understanding of Anne the character, we're going to just not sensationalize, but show you this horrible thing so you can be shocked. Shock, bad things happen.
Like, it almost felt Dickensian, like a Charles Dickens adaptation. But even a Charles Dickens adaptation, they have those brutal scenes of, like, if you watch Nicholas Nickleby or a movie like that, like Oliver Twist, they have those brutal scenes with kids getting treated terribly that are in the books, but then they also always have like comic relief, and you see sort of the humanity of the characters, and you see them grow, and you see them escape, and there's a sense of victory, and there's a sense of, you know, all of those things that you get. There's usually romance, there's, you know, the stuff, and so it helps you to be able to kind of, it makes those rough experiences part of, or Jane Eyre. They mentioned Jane Eyre a couple times. Jane Eyre has a lot of really rough stuff that happens to her, but it also has a lot of like joyous experiences where you really get to know the character, and so it becomes a really rich experience because you've seen the highs and you've seen the lows. And this, again, it's especially so because it's a child, you know, it's a
And the thing about this too is, I didn't believe the lows. They didn't feel earned to me. They just felt pasted on for this first. And then I didn't believe any of the stuff that they were trying to make be the highs, the romance, the you know, because none of it felt real.
Well, and any high moment is immediately almost dampened by, it's like they wouldn't even, like, for instance, this is jumping ahead, but when he gets the puff sleeve dress, this should be a joyous moment of connection between these two people, and a kind of a funny scene where he's embarrassed to get the dress, like, but it has to be from the woman who he once loved and he wasn't able to marry, and so it's this, all of a sudden there's this sad, morose feeling about buying the dress. And then later on you see that Anne has to return the dress because he's put out a mortgage on the house, you know. It's just like, so there's no joy in that, you know, and it's just like everything was that way. There was definitely no joy in her breaking the slate over Gilbert's head. There was no joy in like the picnic, the town picnic, because everybody is treating her like some kind of horrible person, you know. Everyone is talking about her, and everyone is being awful, you know, and it's just like, oh my god.
Okay, and like, in what universe is Josie Pye not the worst person?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, so you decided to leave Josie Pye here, where Josie Pye is, which is just a little catty and whatever, and then bring the rest of Avonlea down lower? Like, why? Okay, I know, like, in this story, like, Anne was abused her whole life and whatever, and cast aside and unloved and pummeled and exposed to horrible things, okay? But even at that, if I were Anne, I wouldn't go back to Avonlea. All those people are horrible in this version.
Yeah, well, and it's like she kind of tries to sort of make that case to Matthew, you know, when she's refusing to go back with him in episode 2, but it just comes off as so false, and so it just
there's no reason for them to. I just couldn't feel anything for it. It didn't make me feel anything other than, what the heck?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
And then at the end of the second episode, they try to kind of make this weird initiation scene where she where it's really drawn out, where she not only changes her name to Anne Shirley Cuthbert, which I
Hate.
that's not in the book, right? Correct?
No,
Oh,
it's
I've never
garbage.
heard that
For
before in
Pete's
any
sake,
version.
Marilla won't even let Anne call her aunt.
Right.
She's like, no, I'm not your aunt. I don't believe in calling things
Plus,
things
I
that they're
don't think
not.
they hyphenated names back then.
No, it's
I don't think it was Shirley Cuthbert. I've never heard of that in my life. And it was this very, like, borderline cultish feel. Like, it was so weird, I thought, with this, like,
where she was literally drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
she was drinking the
cordial.
raspberry cordial. And you're like, and again, which dampened the funniness of the drinking, the drunk Diana segment. That wasn't fun.
No,
it wasn't at all. And so anyway, and yeah, so it was so weird. She's got to like sign her name in the Bible, and that's supposed to be like this great thing. And it feels disingenuous that after all of this, that they would have her do something like that, that they were ready for that she was ready for it, that would all happen then. It just doesn't make sense. And
even within its own universe, I mean, I'm trying really hard to not be like, and it's just trash and garbage. Even within its own universe,
yeah,
I don't understand so many of the choices that they make.
Me
and
too.
I think it's because they established the characters to be the characters from the books. And then they had them responding to things that they force them to respond to that they don't respond to in the books because they just made them up.
Yeah.
In ways that I don't feel like the characters that they established would respond to those events.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, so in episode 3, we get more of that. So Marilla gets invited to this weird suffragette mothers thing. Okay. And that felt so like they were just doing it so that then those same women could reject her.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. There wasn't any other reason. And it's like, why would Marilla do something like that? Like, she would never join a group like that. That's just not her personality. That's not her character.
She wouldn't want to join a group like that. And furthermore, what universe is it a good idea to make the progressive women, the women who are trying to, want education and whatever, end up being the horrible snob people who are closed-minded and jerks? Like, how is that a good look for if you're trying to paint the women of that era as progressive and nice? Like, I just don't even understand that as a character choice for your whatever what are they trying to accomplish with this? I mean, they're trying to make a political statement, obviously, but like, I'm confused by what their message is.
I am too. I wish I could tell you. I don't know. But yeah, and then they have like her going to school, and it's a total disaster. She has, not only is she completely inappropriate, and like they really dial up the pervy teacher thing. Like we saw that in the 1985 Anne of Green Gables. I talked about the pervy teacher, but this is like way worse, and they do it only for, like, I was afraid for Anne that she was going to get like assaulted or something like that. Like,
it was so ridiculous. And the thing about that is, you can't have it both ways, where Anne is this worldly girl who knows all of these things. Oh, but really she doesn't know anything. She's just completely like naive. No, you can't have it both ways. Right. If she had been exposed to that stuff, she'd know what that stuff means, and she wouldn't talk about it like that. So I just, like, that moment for me also felt, it didn't feel like it was plausible or real, because, I mean...
Yeah, well, and also, like, if she had been in the orphanage, they show this scene of these girls dangling this mice above her head, and they show it multiple times, and basically kind of torturing her, for lack of a better word. And if she had something like that happen, there is no freaking way that she's going to be all gossiping and talking with all the girls and chumming it up and whatever. Like, that's not going to happen. And
no.
But not only she does it, she's like saying, "Oh, I bet that Prissy and the teacher are making a baby together," and blah blah blah. And there's just no way that she would do something like that.
No, that's not. I mean, but like, I mean, that's not who Anne is as a person. Anne's
No.
not like that. But if they made the Anne character like that, her knowing what she knows and the experiences that they are alleging that she had wouldn't have provided her more insight into the situation, which would have then prevented her from talking about it in the way that
Yeah.
she ends up talking about it.
Yeah.
Like within their own strange little universe that they've drafted of Anne of Green Gables, I don't even think it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't. It doesn't make sense with her character and in showing these flashbacks, that she would be way more like, I don't know, would be way more traumatized. And so it really didn't make sense, and it was super creepy, and I didn't like it. And you do, I can't remember if it was in 3 or 4, um, I think it's in 3 that she cracks the slate. But in this case, instead of cracking it over his head, she rams it into his head. And they never make Gilbert teasing her, or Gilbert, they make Gilbert kind of a patron saint in here, which was confusing. Yeah. It's like, I was confused about what they were trying to do. Like,
and this is the craziest thing, because you're saying, remember when, okay, I'm just going to jump ahead. Yeah. So you were saying, like, Anne is so tough, Anne's so strong, she doesn't need anyone to help her, she's better than boys, she's better than Jerry, but apparently she's not better than Gilbert. Yeah. So once again, what is the message they're trying to say? Because there's Billy Andrews, who would never act that way because he ends up proposing to Anne in the books, blah. Yeah. Billy Andrews, like, I don't know what Billy Andrews was going to do to Anne in the woods, but it was not going to be nice. And then Gilbert's like, oh, I'm the patron saint of Anne. Let me just save Anne because I'm Gilbert, and savior of the world. And like, so she does need someone to save her, or she's...
Yeah, and like later on when Gilbert's dad dies, like she's all like, well, you really could have it worse. You could be like me. And I'm like, that is so not the character you have developed. Like, who says that? Nobody says that.
No,
nobody does that. It's just like, what? And like, it was just so frustrating so many times. And so like let's talk a little bit about how they try to inject feminism in every inch of this movie. I like feminism. I think feminism can be very good, but the problem is that in this case, it just felt so preachy and so like, it felt like you were wedging this modern voice into these settings and characters.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk about the biggest thing that I have a problem with, which I knew I would have a problem with from the minute that it started. From the minute I saw the trailer, because this was in the trailer.
Yeah.
When Anne says, a girl can do anything a boy can do, and more. Like, I have huge issue with that sentence entirely. Because, like, a girl can do anything a boy can do. Point and blank the period. She's not better than a boy. She's just a girl, which is fine.
And I guess the same as a... Yeah, I rationalize that because she's trying to convince Marilla. So when I saw the ad, I thought, oh, well, she's trying to make a case for herself. So it makes sense. But the problem is that at every turn that is said and that is done, and like, it got so bad that towards the end of things, she is responsible for going to sell all of their earthly possessions in the neighboring city. Like, and Anne says, oh, I can go and do it myself. And Merle says, no, you need Jerry to go with you to protect you. So what did they do when they get to the city? Jerry is beaten to a bloody pulp, of course, because he's the protector. He was foolish enough to do it. And then Anne is fine. And I felt like that was just like so emblematic of how like heavy-handed this is, that like how foolish of them to think that a young girl going to the city with all their earthly possessions might want some companionship, that he has to get beaten. Like, is that...
It was so stupid. There were so many things that I hated. What? And like, so just from a historical standpoint, because like I said, for me, the things that I hate are stuff that I feel are anachronisms or historically inaccurate. And like, no way would Miss Josephine let Jerry sleep in a spare room because he's a servant and he's French. And I'm not saying, oh, servants shouldn't get to sleep in beds and servants shouldn't, whatever, and French people are the terriblest. I'm not saying that. I'm saying at that point in time, that would not have been okay. And then and then he goes and sleeps in the bed with Anne. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that is never happened.
Never.
Yeah, and also like they have Miss Josephine being gay, and it's fine if people want to be gay. That's great, but there's no way in that day and age that a person would just like, yep, just talk about it freely, like as if they're just like talking about, you know, their dog or their cat, or yep, I had, you know, my partner Gertrude, we lived a great life together. Like, you just wouldn't. There's no way that you would just talk about it with somebody you just met. You wouldn't do that. They're like, maybe with somebody, a close friend that you like had, you know, or a close family member, maybe, I guess you would, but even then, maybe not, you know, depending on, it just wasn't done in that day and age.
It wasn't done in that day and age, but I mean, I could see, I mean, if they were going to put that in, Miss Josephine Barry, fine.
It was just emblematic of the kind of modern preaching that was sort of wedged in into the series that all throughout, you know.
It was, I mean, I hated it, but that was because I felt like it was just so strange, out of the blue, like, and it didn't feel like, oh, they had really thought this through and developed this as something that would have been a character-driven thing. It wasn't a character-driven choice. It wasn't a whatever given choice. It was an agenda-driven choice, just painted onto her character. Yeah. Which, I mean, exactly. If you're going to have a homosexual character or another, you know, character in the books, that's okay, I guess, if you want to put that in there. I mean, it's not in her books because, like, they didn't talk about that back then.
Right.
But it would have been more subtle. I mean, Diana wouldn't have known or had any idea, and she wouldn't have talked about it because her parents would have talked about it in hushed tones if they knew, and they probably wouldn't even associate with her if they knew. Right. And I'm not saying that's right, and I'm not saying that's good, but that's what the fact of the matter is at that time. Right. And if the whole point of this was to expose the horrible underbelly of that time, you can't just pick and choose what horrible underbelly of that time you're going to use.
It just ends up coming off as really disingenuous and really preachy. And I don't like it's just so heavy-handed. Like, everybody in the town, absolutely, like, everyone hates her. Everyone. And to the point where in the fourth episode, the only reason she's able to get a few people to like her is because she is responsible for, like, running into a burning building and stopping this fire. You know, you're just like, way to go, subtlety there. You know, like, really? I mean,
it's the whole thing was ridiculous, and I feel like we could have just wrapped this podcast up and said everything was terrible. And I don't know why they made any of the choices that they made, because they didn't make sense in context with Anne of Green Gables, the books, or any of the other adaptations, and they didn't even make sense within the context of what they decided to create as Anne of Green Gables.
Well, but, and I have to talk about one more thing that just I couldn't believe. I was just shocked, even after all of this. So Matthew decides to get a mortgage on the house, and then he spends all of the money on crops or whatever, and I guess it's impossible to send that back or whatever, I don't know. And so they're going to have to sell all their earthly possessions in order to try to pay the mortgage, and the bank people are horrible, of course. And so Matthew of all people decides that he is going, because he's had a heart attack or whatever, and he decides that everybody would be better off if they had his life insurance, and he actually gets a gun and tries and is like seconds away from killing himself.
Which, okay, first of all, even within the context of that story, I'm not able to dispel my belief that any life insurance policyholder would get their payoff if the person committed suicide.
Right.
It's literally, you cannot be paid if the person kills themselves.
Right.
I mean, it happens. Okay. we'll talk about it in a second. But so first of all, I mean, just like even that, like it doesn't even make sense as a justification for him saying that he's going to kill himself. They just put it in there because they felt like it. But it also, I feel like, cheapens people who have, you know, mental health and depression and deal with suicide. It doesn't deal with suicide in a healthy way. It doesn't treat it in a way that's believable. People
Right.
don't people don't do that. They didn't even show him getting to a point of desperation where that would be something that he would do.
Right.
He wasn't feeling anyway. So I just
Yeah, that Matthew would never do that ever. Even the Matthew in this.
Yeah, and they well, and
no.
I mean, maybe the Matthew in this that they did, they could have gotten him to a point where I could believe that he would try that, but they didn't do it. They cheapened the whole thing to a point where it was a plot device. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't it was I hated it.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I just thought, how can this thing become even worse? And then I'm like, Matthew, it made me so mad. And so yeah, this was a total miss. I gave it a D in my review just because it is well shot, and I do think the casting was pretty good, so I didn't give it an F, but it felt like it felt like an F. I mean, this, and we had watched the one from last year, which has lots of problems, but it's billion times better than this.
Yeah, and the thing about so the thing that I think drives me the craziest about the people who are talking about this and the people who worked on this project, I feel like the people who like this movie are people who have only ever watched the 1980s Anne of Green Gables and just feel like that is the original and what it is. Which, I mean, they're great. I mean, you love them. I enjoy them. But they're not the end all be all of Anne.
Right.
And then I feel like the directors, the people who've worked on this, who wrote this, I don't feel like they took the time to get to know Anne past the first book. Yeah. I feel like none of the people who worked on it, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't feel like they had any insight into Anne or Anne's world beyond what they read in the first book and decided they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I'm currently, because I just decided to reread them all to make myself feel better. I'm currently in the same thing. I'm currently in Anne's House of Dreams.
Oh, you're fast.
Well,
wow, you're a fast reader. Holy
and cow. So, well, once you know it all, it's basically just like, oh, let me glance at this page and remember all the words. So I'm in Anne's House of Dreams, and we just met Leslie Moore. And if they were going to do a bleak, dark adaptation of Anne of Green Gables or something in the Anne of Green Gables world, they should have just done the story of Leslie Moore, because her life is basically all the horrible stuff they want to have happen to Anne, except for it's done in a realistic way. It's not cheap, and it would have been true to the books. But the way that they are trying to do all of this and for stuff, it just doesn't add up for me, even within their own universe.
I mean, I had to think, like, who were they making this for? You know, like, it's obviously not made for people nostalgic of the series or books. It's not made for, I mean, I guess maybe you think it is made for people nostalgic of the series, but I don't think so. It's definitely not made for kids, that's for sure. I called my sister and I said, don't show it to your girls. I wouldn't. Absolutely not. And I don't know, just like, who was this for? Like, what were they trying to do? I have no idea. It was just so, like, you can have horrible things happen, like a Dickens book. Like lots of horrible things happen in Dickens books, like Oliver Twist. He's starving, the kid, like horrible things happen to him. But you never lose that sense of hope, and you never lose that sense of that, he'll meet a good person just in the nick of time that'll push him forward, and then another good person that will come, and whatever it might be. Great Expectations is the same way. There's all these different things. And so, like, if you need that, then there wasn't enough hope. There wasn't enough, like, it was really disappointing, really dreadful, and I just don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah, I mean, if they had written this show and called it Orphan Girl from the city moves to a small town, or whatever they wanted to call it.
Right.
And they changed all the character names, so it was like Gertrude and the of Purple Brick Mansion. I wouldn't like it.
No, because like I said, even with Jane Eyre, which the whole like first third of Jane Eyre is pretty bleak, horrible, but she still has Helen. She still has her teacher. She still has a few things of like hope and encouragement, and enough to kind of get you through it. And so I don't know. This was a huge miss and a huge disappointment. I feel like it was really a chance to make something special, and they really failed. They failed.
And it was the worst.
And it's a shame, because it's all like women writers, mostly women directors. Like you just every part of it should be something that I love, but man, they just messed it. And so I think, if we're doing one out of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, I give it a 1.
Yeah, I mean, I made that chart.
Oh,
I can't remember. I don't know what that averages out to. So it was like a 4 in the first episode, and then by the end it was a -10.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even want to know. I'm not going to watch if it gets moved, if it gets renewed to a second season. I'm not going to watch a second of it.
No way. No. Well, I'm sorry. This was going to be such a fun, pleasant experience.
I know, we were so excited. I was like, I can't wait. It was the worst. For the later episodes, my mom watched them with me, and we were just, my mom, who got me reading the books, we both just we were angry when we were done watching it.
I was angry too. I really was.
If we had tried to podcast about this on Saturday, I would have been swearing. Like, I swore up a storm about it. I was angry. And it was because I felt affronted by it. It was it was like they took something very precious to me, the Anne books. And I'm not just me, I'm sure there's hundreds
me as well.
Millions of people who care deeply about Anne, because she represents a whole bunch to everybody, She represents people's childhoods, people's family relationships, and, she stands for something. And they took her and they made her into something she completely wasn't, and tried to make her stand for things that she wasn't, and took away the heart of everything that Anne is. Yeah. I had a friend who likes it, and it's fine.
Really interesting.
And she said that she thought like Anne would probably like the new Gothic feel of it, and I just don't think so.
No.
I mean, even when Anne was writing all of her melodramatic books where everyone died or got sick or had the croup, and they were tragedies. They were tragedies born of like death and whatever.
Romanticism. They were tragedies born of romanticism.
Yeah, they weren't tragedies born out of,
which is hope in its core essence. Really, when you think of romance, is actually kind of hopeful.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
I disagree with my friend.
Yeah.
I don't think Anne would approve. I don't think Lucy would approve. I don't think anything.
No. I think that she is in the vast minority. From what I've seen on Twitter, what I've seen in different articles, there are a few articles that have praised it, but for the most part, they're saying, I feel like the general response is rejecting it, which I'm glad to see.
And the funny thing to me is about the episodes, the articles you sent to me, people who are enjoying it, there are people who enjoyed it through the first episode.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anybody who has said, oh, I watched the whole thing. I love it.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how you defend that Matthew thing. I mean, that was just horrible. Anyway. All right. Well, I'm sorry I put you through this horrible experience.
It's okay. You know what I'm looking forward to? Podcasting about the Dirty Dancing remake.
Yeah, there we go.
Because no matter what, I guarantee you, it won't be as bleak as this.
No. They've got like abortion and they got those things, but it's not going to be as bleak as this.
No, it won't.
Oh my gosh. All right, yeah, that'll be fun. We will figure out a time to talk about that and hopefully we'll be healed by then.
Don't put baby in a corner and don't make me watch this Anne of Green Gables monstrosity again.
I won't, I promise. So, all right. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. And we will find a better series to talk about one of these days. And we'll talk about Dirty Dancing. So where can people find you?
I'm just at Amber Brainwaves on Twitter, and that's it.
That's it. We did it.
Are we going to review the whatever one with Martin Sheen?
We can if you want, if you're still up for it. Sure.
Yeah, let's do that one because that one, my friend, zero bleakness.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that'll be fun. We'll figure it out. Probably maybe after you finish the play. But I'll announce it and we'll do that. And I am going to be reviewing the latest episode of Doctor Who probably on Tuesday. So look forward to that. But it should be a lighter podcast week for me. On Saturday, my friend is going to be joining me, and we are going to be talking all about Field of Dreams. Talk about the polar opposite of this.
Yes!
So that'll be fun. So look forward to that. And so, oh well, win some, you lose some, right?
Yeah, and man, did we lose some.
Yeah, we did. Bye, everyone.
See ya.